Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Story Darlings podcast. I'm Sandra.
And I'm Tera.
And what are we talking about today, Tera?
So we are going to take a trip back in time for Celaena Sardathian, and we are reading The Assassin's Blade, the first part, which for us is going to be the first 3 short stories. So we're going to read The Assassin and the Pirate, The Assassin and the Healer, and then The Assassin and the Desert, I think is what it's called.
The Assassin's Blade is a short story collection of 5 stories, and they all have a main plotline thread. There's like an overarching story that they all eventually get to. So the first 3 stories, the Pirate Lord starts out with Celaena waking up at like 4 in the morning. They have been summoned to Arobyn's table, and there are noticeably 2 assassins not there. So we find out that an assassin named Grigori, who she does not like, has been captured and is in the royal dungeons. And then we finally see Sam Cortland, who is weirdly seated next to Arobyn, where someone named Ben usually sits, who is like the second in command, if there is such a thing. So Celaena is the heir, I guess, to the King of Assassins, like the protege, but Ben is like his right-hand man, and he is absent. And they're all seated at this table to discuss what has gone on. Celaena is very snarky and is all about the murder, which I'm sure Tera loves.
True to form, Celaena is very snarky, but I just have to point out one thing before we get too much further. Celaena is unusually snarky in this scene because she is mad that she is being woken up at 4 a.m. and there is a quip to her about, well, if you didn't stay up reading all night, you wouldn't have a problem waking up this early. And I want to know how many other people have this problem where they stay up reading too late and then they're a little agitated in the morning when they have to wake up, especially if they have to wake up early.
Definitely. That line spoke to me. I was like, oh, this is like Tera and me right now for the read-along.
Yes. And then, like Sandra said, she's all about the murder and the mayhem because Grigori is captured. And she's just like, well, just let him die. It's not that big of a deal. And everyone else around the table is like, what? What? You're going to let one of your own die? And she's like, yeah. And they're like, well, what if he tells secrets? She's like, well, then you go in there and kill him first. I don't get the problem.
Yeah. We see a little more, if the personality spectrum is a thing, we see Celaena more on the evil side. She's just very willy-nilly about killing people. And we see Sam kind of being the conscience at the table, like, no, we can't do that. That's wrong, which is so weird. But she's like in her expensive nightgown, and we're seeing like a glimpse of like the high society assassin type of Celaena. She's like 16 years old here, right? All of the events that led up to what we know happened that landed her in the salt mines of Endovier. This is what all of these short stories lead up to. She finds out Ben died, and then she's just like, we'll kill Grigori so he can't give away our secrets. So we fast forward to 2 months later, and her and Sam are paired up to do a little mission together. What they are told about this mission is that assassins have been killed by this pirate lord, Rolf, in Skulls Bay. And so she and Sam have been ordered to go there and, figure out what's up and be like a mediator line of communication to solve that problem. And they get there, and there's this scene where Celaena is walking through the pirate lord's first floor of the tavern, and it's basically his office, and she's just pilfering through his things without a care in the world. And Sam is just like, what are you doing? You can't touch that. They're gonna know. And she's like, anyone, you can hear anyone walking because these floors are so creaky. And she's just doing whatever she wants. And I love her attitude.
And she's also a little snarky in this scene because she has to be covered head to toe this whole time. There's nobody being able to see what she looks like. And I don't know, sometimes I get cranky because my clothes don't fit right or they feel weird. And so I'm just me and Celaena are on the same wavelength here. I'd be snarky too.
Yeah, she doesn't want anyone knowing who she is because there's this mystique about her being this queen of the underworld. No one knows it's a 16-year-old girl, so she's hiding behind this mask. How did you picture the mask that she was wearing?
I kind of pictured it like a Venetian mask that covers here, because she said in a later scene or something about somebody punched her in it and it kind of broke. So I'm imagining a hard not just like a piece of cloth over her mouth, but like a hard thing. And it muffles her voice and stuff like that. So it would have to be so trying to breathe in that and just annoying.
Yeah, but she's still carrying on with her swagger. And Skulls Bay is a very humid coastal place, so it's hot as fuck. She's like head to toe in black and just sweating like a pig, I think is like how it's described a few times. And she's just sweltering in this mask. So Rolf appears and he invites them to dinner. As you can expect from a bunch of pirates, there's just a lot of people drinking, a lot of boisterousness. There's just people kind of having little brawls here and there. And they're just kind of getting acquainted with each other and like pressing each other's buttons to see what they can get away with. And so the interesting thing about Rolf is he has a map tattooed on his hands that used to like show him treasure and all of these things of highlight. When magic disappeared, the map stopped working. So it's like frozen on his hands and pretty much outdated at this point. As Selena and Sam are sitting there talking to Rolf, they find out that this is not about murdered assassins that were under Arobyn's employ. What is it about?
It is about slave trade. So Rolf is involved in the slave trade and he is providing these slaves throughout the continent. The assassins are getting involved in that and they are buying some of these slaves. As you can guess, based off of what you know about Selena already, she ain't down for that. She thinks it's completely wrong from the very beginning and she devises a way to stop this and to free the slaves. And Sam kind of goes unwillingly along with it, a little bit willingly, but a little bit unwillingly, because he knows he's going to get in trouble. He knows that they're not going to come out of this unscathed. So at first he's like, okay, well, I don't think that that's the right plan. We're going to get in trouble. And she's like, I'm doing it with or without you. So you can like do it with me or you cannot. And Sam decides to help her out because he knows that if she does it on her own, she's likely to get herself killed. And then he's going to get in trouble either way because he's not going to bring her home. And she is the one that has to come home. And so Sam, I think a little unwillingly, still goes along with this, but he is still a good guy. He wants to help them, but he kind of is weighing that I'm going to get in trouble versus the greater good.
The only reason he goes along with it is because he knows Selena is the indispensable one in the eyes of Arobyn. And he's like, well, I can always use the excuse I was just backing her up. So, you know, whatever else happens to him is just a residual effect, I guess. I think one of the funniest parts of this little short story was when Selena and Sam are doing the recon work, because he knows she's up to something with the questions she's asking and the places that she's looking around. She's making a note of, it's called Shipbreaker, which is this giant chain that lays across the bay so that ships cannot pass or else they will destroy themselves crossing over. She is asking about the skill of the slaves. Are any of them speak, you know, other languages so that she can try and get someone that would be able to coordinate with them? So she's like already scheming to free 200 slaves. And these are the slaves that end up in the salt mines in Calicola. One of the interesting call outs that Sam figures out is he's like, this isn't about us coming to deal with assassins or slaves. There's a reason that Arobyn got rid of us and sent his top 2 assassins away at this time with all of the stuff that happened, because they never got any answers about what Ben was doing and with Grigori, right?
Well, and we get a sense that Ben is a good person based off of like Selena's impression and some of the scenes that we get flashbacks to. Well, I guess not really flashbacks, but her like thinking about how he was with her when she was little. For Ben to have died and nobody cared, you get the sense that Arobyn was involved in something that Ben didn't agree with.
And they even mentioned that Arobyn looked shaken up that night with whatever happened 2 months prior that initiated Sam and Selena getting sent to Skulls Bay. So the rest of the short story plays out with Selena acting on her thing. They have a fun bar scene where Sam has to pretend like he's just doing drinking games and drinking everyone, you know, under the table, which is so fun. Do you want to say something?
No, it was just a funny, because he pokes a hole in his like cup kind of thing, just a small hole to where it like dribbles out and nobody notices that like his drinks are not going in his mouth, but they're going out on the table. And then Selena gets her fight that she has been just hankering for, which is fun.
Yeah, so she sneaks out of this bar when all of this belligerence and drunkardness is happening, but Rolf catches her. That makes her have to act her plan out very quickly. So Sam is trying to book it to the tower, which is also holding up one one end of the shipbreaker chain. So he's supposed to be doing his part. She's dealing with Rolf. Meanwhile, Rolf's calling his guys to stop them. So a little skirmish basically takes place at Skulls Bay, and shit is just hitting the fan. The slaves do get free. They commandeer the ship and take off.
And Selena ends up making Rolf agree that he will get out of the slave trade, that he will not do that anymore. And then if he finds anybody doing that, that he will kill them or basically take the slaves away and free them. And then she also gets him to sign a, hey, I'm not going to be involved with Arabin anymore in this. So she exacts some heavy penance from that pirate as well. So not only did she free the 200, she had a large part in stopping the slave trade in general.
This is not going to sit well with Arabin at all, because who knows how much money this is costing him, and we all know that's all he cares about. Power, money, I guess is the same thing in his eyes. So now that they are done in Skulls Bay, Sam and Selena are to return back to Rifthold and report back. That is pretty much where the second story, The Assassin and the Healer, takes place. So the Assassin and the Healer starts up. Selena is in this town called Inish, and she is waiting for a ship to the Red Desert, where she is going to do 1 month training with the Silent Assassins as her punishment for going against Arabin.
And now she got a punishment before she left. She went back to Arabin and she was beat severely. And she doesn't know what happened to Sam because she passed out from her beating before they got to Sam. So in the next 2 short stories, she has no idea what happened to Sam for going along with her plan. But she knows that she was beat enough to make her pass out, and then weeks later still have the bruises and the cuts and everything on her face and on her body that she received because of this beating.
Great point. Left out that small detail. We also get the point of view from a woman working in the Inish tavern, Irene Towers. And Irene is from Fenharrow, which is where I think Eelway and other cities like in the south are located. So she reminded me of Nahimi a lot physically, like the bronzer skin, the curly dark hair, the brown eyes, that kind of thing. And so we learn about Irene that she's working in this bar to make money so that she could go study to be a healer like her mom was. And she wants to go to the southern continent where there's this esteemed healer school, the Torre Chesme. And so that's her goal. But she has been working here for like all of a year, never planned on being here this long, but she cannot make enough money to pay for school, the trip over there, a place to stay.
Her boss / landlord keeps upping her rent to where she will never be able to like make enough money. So there's some trickery going on there too, because he wants her to stay. And so he's like, oh, well, you made a little bit more money this month. I'm just going to up it.
You just feel bad for Irene because she's a couple years older than Selena is, but she's just dealing like with the worst of the worst at this bar. When I picture Inish in my head, it's just this gutter town with full of all of these seedy, suspicious people. So she's dealing with being sexually harassed like on a daily basis. She's afraid to like turn her back for 1 second or to be in the alley alone, you know, taking out the garbage for 1 second, you know, for fear of some men jumping her. So it's that kind of situation. And so we learn a little bit about Irene's dreams. So with school, we learn that her mom was so special to her and she had a great relationship with her mom, that her mom was murdered by the King of Otterlin and his regime in expanding empire. And so they were just another casualty of this pointless war. We get more of that information from Irene's point of view.
So Selena, being Selena, is itching for a fight. So she has been staying in this bar for a little while, I grasp. And so each night she's just kind of trying to have a fight. She's noticed Irene and noticed that she is avoiding people. And there's a group of mercenaries that are sexually harassing Irene. Selena starts talking just a little bit to Irene, and then she kind of like, I don't need to start trouble, like, peace out. But then she notices Irene taking out the trash, and the mercenaries are there. They're waiting. This is their chance to do what they wanted to do with Irene. So Selena attacks him first, kind of, she's in the shadows, and she grabs one, and then he's dead, and then she grabs the other from the other side, and he's dead. So I envisioned a very, like, you know, those superhero movies where they just like come out of the shadows and get them and then go back back into the shadows kind of thing. And then she's down to the last few, and she ends up beating them, all except for one who got away. And so she is telling Irene, hey, you need to learn how to take care of yourself because you're a young woman. You want to go to this healer camp. You're wanting to do good things for the world. I want that for you. She teaches Irene a little bit of self-defense and like how to take care of herself. Some few good punches to the groin, stepping on the instep. It's very much like Miss Congeniality, you know, how like Gracie Lou Freebush is, you know, the instep, the groin, the like. As she's finishing teaching Irene how to defend herself a little bit, the one mercenary that got away comes back and he brought some friends with him. And Irene's like, we should probably run, kind of like, she's like, I know you could take them before because there was like the surprise factor, but now you don't have the surprise factor. And Selena is like, I got it, don't worry. And so Selena goes about killing all of the mercenaries, but one came through the other door. And Selena had told Irene to get away and get into the tavern or whatever. Well, one was coming out as Irene was going in, and he grabbed her and was holding a knife to her throat. And Selena and Irene have this like little conversation, and if I do remember correctly, it was like non-verbal. And so Irene's like, okay. And so she does her little instep, she does her little groin hit and all of that, and she gets away just enough for Selena to like help kill this guy. It was a bonding moment.
That was such a fun scene, especially the alley scene. It was very cinematic, reappearing and disappearing in the mist and these dudes just dying. I loved seeing Selena in these short stories because we just get like pure assassin Selena, gives no fucks, tough love. She was just, at some point, you're going to have to be brave and take a stand and take care of yourself. She just wasn't worried about hurting her feelings at all.
I have a couple points there because she did tell her, you're just going to have to be brave. We see Selena, and yes, she's brave when she's fighting people, but she's not brave enough to take her kingdom back. She's just not as brave as you want her to be. Up until that last part of the last book, she was too afraid to come into her birthright. And so it's funny to me for her at 16 to be telling this girl to be brave and to like do what you were born to do when she in fact is not doing that. She is brave in that she will fight anybody and she's ready to kill them and she's ready to do all this stuff and she's ready to die, but she's not brave in the fact that she's not taking over her birthright. You also see not only the like, I don't give a fuck, I'm the assassin, but you see the Selena that cares. Like the second she hears that any of these people are out to do good in the world, she's down. She's, you know, you see the Selena that's like, I'm willing to die for you because you're willing to do good in the world. And you see that with the slaves. You see that with her growing relationship with Sam because he was willing to help her. You see that with Irene. And then you see that in the next one too. You see that side of Selena that we all love, hopefully. If you don't love that, then I
what is wrong with you?
I don't know what to say about that, but...
So, I mean, this story ends with Selena giving like a pouch of coins and a ruby, like a big ruby that will make someone respectably wealthy. And so she just gives this to Irene. Hey, you know, good luck in school and do the right thing.
It's a significant ruby too, because it is the ruby brooch that Arabin gave her on her 16th birthday. You can see at this point, her relationship with Arabin is like plummeting.
I think she mentions in this story too that she went and got the apartment as well. So she is slowly like making a delineation, like separating herself from him and having like a second life almost. So she's still using her assassin enslavement essentially as a means to an end to do what she wants in the long run. But she is, as Tera said, making those baby steps to remove herself.
Well, and you hear a little bit more about that enslavement, the assassin enslavement, because I don't remember who mentions it, but somebody mentions that Arabin is using her buying things and his support of her to charge her to make more of the amount that she owes him. You see that he is doing kind of like the landlord is doing for Irene in that, oh, well, you did more this month, so I'm going to like up what I'm charging you for stuff kind of thing. In effect, he's trying to make it to where she will never be able to be out of his employment.
So many parallels with the short stories and Selena's present stuff. So like as Tera said, with Arabin and Nolan, tavern owner. And then I saw a lot of similarities. You will probably disagree with me because he's on your shit list right now. But Sam really reminded me a lot of Kale in the beginning. The brown eyes, wanting to do the honorable thing, like all about about duty and like responsibility type of thing. There was a lot of that was very much the same. And then with like Nehemia and Irene, it's like, oh, I'm like seeing so many little parallel threads here.
Well, and that makes sense later on why she is drawn to Kale and why she's drawn to Nehemia, because she's had these people in her life that she cared about that are very reminiscent of these people. And yes, I do agree with you, even though Kale's on my shit list, that Sam is very reminiscent of Kale.
Sam seems to be a bit quicker on, learning and growing than Kale.
And you do see Sam comes to the conclusion that she's the most important thing very early on. It takes him like half of a short story to come to this, whereas Kale has now had 3 books, 3 very lengthy books, lots of time that he is not there yet. You see that because when going into the 3rd short story, we are making our way to the desert, the Red Desert, I think is what it's called, to meet the Silent Assassins. Selena is reminiscing over her bruises and cuts and things, and she mentions that Sam, while she was receiving this beating, kept saying something to Arabin, and he kept yelling at Arabin a phrase. And she kind of has this kind of memory a couple of times through this short story. And what Sam was saying is, I'll kill you, as Arabin was beating Selena. And so you see that Sam took like a short amount of time to just switch. He's like, nope. My loyalty is no longer to you because you are beating somebody I care about. No, I'll kill you. Which I really hope Sam is, I know Sam's okay when we come back because we've read the first 3 books. We know when Sam dies and it's not here. It does kind of lead you to the point. Is this why Sam dies? I know it's not right this moment, but is this why he dies? Either way, you see him switch very, very quickly to, no, you're in the wrong and I'm going to support her.
I knew this part would resonate with you so deeply because you are such a ride or die kind of girl. So when he's screaming, I will kill you, I was just like picturing you like, yeah.
Yes. I was like, yes, somebody is there ride or die for Selena, because she is ride or die for like literally everybody. Somebody needs to be that for her.
It was so nice and so refreshing and uplifting to see finally what was so special about Sam and someone treat her with that same regard that she shows everybody else.
It's also funny because she doesn't feel that way yet about Sam. Like, she's not ride or die for him yet. She has feelings for him, but she's a little stepped back.
She has feelings and inklings toward him and is in the phase of, what the fuck? Like, why am I even thinking this right now? Like, no, why is my mind going there? That's not how I see Sam. She's so just lying to herself about it. So I can't wait to see the next 2 books. But the 3rd book, The Assassin and the Desert. So Selena has made this ship ride from Inish to the Red Desert coast. And then from there, she has to like trek across the desert in this sweltering heat and finally makes it to the Silent Assassins. And there are some new characters that come into the mix here. So we have the Master, who is the head of the Silent Assassins, and as the name suggests, he took an oath of silence at some point, but he just does not speak at all. We'll get to the later bit. Then there's Ilias, who's the Master's son. Then we have Mikhail, who is another of the Silent Assassins and has a thing for this other character named Ansel, who ends up being one of Selena's besties at this place for now. And the big bad is a man named Lord Barrick, who lives in Xandria and just causes all kinds of grief for the Silent Assassins. So that's kind of our new cast. And what I liked about the desert story, it gives you a lot of the context and background lore about like the spiders and the Iron Teeth witches, because what do we find out about Ansel?
That she is from a place that used to be a part of the Witch Kingdom. Her family was murdered. Her whole mission in life is to go back to her home country and defeat the person that took it and take it back. As she escaped, she ran into an Iron Teeth witch, and she was deathly afraid because they don't have the best reputation, right? They're mean people. They don't have a heart. But this Iron Tooth witch tells her, hey, today's not your day to die. Go be yourself, whatever. And so I found that kind of odd because from the story so far, I didn't think they had a whole lot of mercy or a whole lot of like, they were just like, kill. I feel like there's something else like that witch was up to besides just letting her go.
But maybe it wasn't this witch, or maybe it was a different one. But we do hear a story about Ansel's childhood with the other child that ended up, they allude to being eaten by one of the Iron Teeth witches. Like all that was left were her bones picked clean, which was so sad. And so there's definitely a reason that the Iron Teeth witches and all the witches in general have a bad rep, because they are ruthless, brutal, cruel killers.
You do also see that she has a symbol of a wolf, and that's on her sword, which used to be her dad's, and then her armor all has a wolf on it. And I know we've seen the wolf symbol a few times in the other books, so I'm foreshadowing that there's like a connection of some sort to Ansel too there.
She also has red hair, is how she's described. And I think it was the last book, was it Heir of Fire, where they mentioned like someone with red hair that was in the wasteland or the witch's kingdom or whatever. I think it was like Manon's POV where that was mentioned or something. So there's like a little bit of like connection being drawn there. But I love this story because of everything kind of coming together. And we see all of these little breadcrumbs that make up why Celaena knows the things that she does.
Well, and one of those little breadcrumbs, and it's not necessarily why Celaena knows it, but we're introduced to the silk, the spider silk. And we're introduced to that by, there's a vendor, kind of, he's waiting on his ship. And he's like, well, while I'm waiting, I might as well try and sell stuff. And he has spider silk. And Celaena's like, what the hell are you doing here? Why aren't you in like Rifthold, where you can actually sell this? Because here's like this teeny tiny town, and like you're not going to sell very much. They don't have that kind of money, kind of a thing. And he's like, well, I'm just waiting on my ship and then I'm going to go. And she's like, oh, how'd you get it? And she goes through all those things that she's heard about, the spiders that weave this silk. She learns that he got it off of a spider and he had to trade in years of his life to get it. And he's like, I thought that they would take him off the end of my life, because he says he's 25 and he looks, as Celaena says, in his 40s. And he's like, I thought that they'd take him off the end of my life, but no, they took like the prime years. And she's like, okay, and goes on. And he's like, hey, I'm like actually looking for somebody to kill that spider, because that's how I get my time back, is if that spider dies, then I can have my years back. And so he's like, I'm kind of looking for somebody to kill it, and you look like a person that could probably handle that. And she's like, I'm actually doing something right now. And he's like, well,
fine, buddy.
Yeah. And he's like, well, like, here's, I think he gives her like a card kind of thing. Like he tells her who he is, and like, if you do come back, I'll pay you. And he gives her a tiny piece of that. So we know Celaena now has some of the spider silk, but what does she do with it? Or does she still have it? Is it still like in her possession? Is she going to use it later on? We don't know yet.
The Asterian mares. So that was another thing that is mentioned a few times in previous books. And we finally get to see how this story started. The desert was fun because we see Celaena, even though she's in trouble and recovering from being beat up by Erebin and stuff, we see her having fun and just kind of being out on her own and being wild and causing havoc, but for always the good reason. But we see all of these little sources of like how these stories came about that she mentions to people casually in conversations later in the series. And it's so fulfilling that way. So she gets very close with this girl named Ansel. And Ansel, we learn, has been there for several years, trying to get on the master's radar so that she can become apprenticed under him and learn the silent assassin's ways. But she has still not been chosen or whatever to receive training from him. So she's a bit sour about that.
Tiny bit.
When I say a bit, very sour about that, and we'll see why.
So we take a journey with Celaena and Ansel, because Ansel is sent on a journey to talk to Lord Beric after basically he keeps attacking the silent assassins. And so kind of a peace negotiation kind of thing is what Ansel is sent to do. So she goes and meets him by herself, and Celaena's like, well, why the fuck did you bring me then if you're just going to go by yourself? Like, what am I doing here? And so that's where she kind of just goes and does her little shopping spree and meets the guy with the spider silk. She buys some shoes, she buys some perfume kind of thing. And as she is waiting around for Ansel, and then Ansel comes out, and they had seen that Lord Beric had bought the little horses. And they were very, very, like, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm dumb.
The horses expensive?
Expensive, yes. So they were very, very expensive horses. And Ansel decides, hey, why walk home? Like when we can take these horses. And so they steal the horses from Lord Bear and they, ride the horses back to the keep. And as you can imagine, Lord Beric is not happy about his very, very, very expensive horses being stolen by an assassin that was supposed to be there for like a peace treaty kind of thing. And so Ansel and Selena get back, and the master is not super happy either because, again, he sent her on this peace treaty kind of thing. So he is trying to figure out what happened, what led to this. And Selena ends up taking the fall. And she's like, hey, it was me. I'm the one who decided it would be better to just ride the horse and not walk so that Ansel didn't get in trouble. And so Ansel thought, well, she's going to get in trouble for this, but instead, this is Selena's in with the master. Like, he decides he will train her now. And so he sends word that he is ready for her to come meet with him, and he starts training her. And again, Ansel is not super happy because she's like, wait, she did something wrong. She went against what you were like expecting, and it's kind of a reward instead of a punishment. So that kind of peeves Ansel off a little bit. Their punishment together was to have to like take care of these horses, like muck their stalls and all of this stuff. And so it was a fun time for Selena as she's being trained by this assassin. At the same time, she's having to muck these stalls. At the same time, she's still recovering from Arobyn's beating, but she's taking it all with like stride, just like we knew she would.
To backpedal just a little bit, while Selena is hanging out in the marketplace while Ansel does her peace treaty stuff with the Lord of Xandria, she hears gossip and whisperings that the assassins are in cahoots with the Lord of Xandria. Like there's someone working on the inside to make Xandria's dreams come true, like whatever he's after. And so there's like a little bit of that gossip.
We do know what Xandria is after. Like he is wanting to get back on the good graces of the king. So he is trying to get rid of the assassins so that he can get back in the good graces of the king of Otterland.
Which I can't remember why the silent assassins were on the shit list for the king.
Well, because they aren't providing him with slaves. They aren't providing him with their assassins. They get the choice of whether or not they go. And so most of them are choosing not to. Unlike Arobyn, who's like, you will do what I say. Like, you are my property. The silent masters, like, no, they get a choice. Like, I'll train them. And if they want to go work in the noble houses of your country, they can. But he's not like in the slave mentality.
Yeah.
So the king doesn't necessarily like him so much.
I like that juxtaposition between the silent assassins and Arobyn's assassins. And they're just more noble and good people at the heart.
And you see that at the very last line that the master says to her, which we'll get to. He makes a point out of that.
With any story, of course, there's a party. So this one happens to be like Midsummer's Eve party. And so there's music and there's feast and there's drinking and dancing and music. And I was laughing so hard because the music is silent music. So if you ever picture those parties where it's like silent parties and everyone has like headphones on and they're just like awkwardly dancing and everything is silent around them, I could not stop laughing reading this scene.
And we get Selena's first almost kiss, or almost her first kiss with Ilias. Because you get the sense throughout the story that Ilias has a crush on her. And at first she's like, oh, he's into me. And like her ego takes over. And then he follows her as she's following the master. And he's like, no, back it off. And she's like, oh, he wasn't into me. He was just afraid that I would kill his dad. And then she flips it back because then he is into her again. And they share an almost kiss. But Selena then thinks of Sam. And she's like, what the fuck? Why am I thinking of him?
Once again, Selena finds herself the object of many men's eye. Yes. Ilias was a cute one, though, because he has like the sea green eyes and like the tanner complexion and curly hair and stuff is how he's described. But so cute. I'm like, I have ship. To use the word ship, I'm like, I'm always constantly shipping her and wanting her to just have fun and be with these nice boys.
Well, and his family is not like a literal like crazy mess. Like Kale's family's a crazy mess. Dorian's family's a crazy mess. Rowan's family's a crazy mess. Sam's family was a crazy mess. I mean, because his mom died and he doesn't know who his dad was. His mom is basically a prostitute who died. Like one of her Johns like took it a little too far and beat her to death. And she left him to the assassins. And so like literally every other guy in the story's life is a crazy fucking mess, except for Ilias. And his dad's like kind of nice, kind of quiet. So I don't know. I was down for Ilias too.
Another thing that I appreciate about this story is we saw how Celaena struggles with her poisons. If she has a weakness, it is not knowing her poisons. And that is proven again because there's the scene where she consumes alcohol not knowing it's poisoned because this is just her weakness. And you want to talk about that scene, like how it goes down?
Yeah, so she has her like trainings with the master and she is celebrating. She drinks her alcohol and then she wakes up the next morning basically. And the next morning she has a letter on her and all of her stuff has been packed and she's like just been kind of kicked out. And the letter tells her, you need to leave. I thought that this was a better way of making you leave than, you know, doing it publicly. Leave, basically. And so she's like, okay, fine, I'll leave. I don't understand why. I don't understand how I offended you, but whatever. If you don't want me here, you don't want me here. And so she takes off. But as she's like leaving, she sees that there are a group of 200 like soldiers coming up. And she's like, well, what the hell are they doing here? There's nothing that way. And then she's like, wait a minute, there is something that way. It's the keep, the Silent Assassin's keep. And so she kind of works in her head, like, what's going on? And she's like, wait a minute, they're going to attack the Silent Assassins. And then she's like, well, they kicked me out. I don't know why I care. But she does. Celaena is Celaena. And so she goes back and she is trying to help them. And she walks in and she sees some of them dead, including Mikhail, which I find super sad. But Mikhail is dead and Ilias is severely hurt and the master is on the ground and he had also been given poison. And so he is paralyzed and standing over them is Ansel. And Ansel is the person that has been helping Lord Beric from the Silent Assassins. And she is hoping that he will help her win her property back by helping provide the men for her battle. And in return, she is giving him the Silent Assassins, the head of the master, and kind of betraying all of their help that they gave her. And so she is standing over the master and Celaena's like, don't do this, you're better than this kind of thing. And Ansel's like, no, this is my only way of avenging my family. And so Celaena's like, don't do this because I really don't want to have to do what I'm going to have to do if you do this. And so Ansel and Celaena get into a fight, and Celaena, being Celaena, beats her. But also Celaena, being Celaena, she doesn't want to kill her friend. And so she gives her an out, and she's like, go away. Like, I'll give you 20 minutes, and then I'm shooting an arrow at you. Whether you survive that or not depends on how well you do this. And so Ansel goes running away, and Celaena is trying to take care of Ilias, who the master, he doesn't care if he dies, he cares if his son dies. And so he's like, take care of him first. And so she kind of takes care of him. The other assassins come in and get him to safety. And then she goes to the master and the master talks to her. And she's like, wait, I thought you took a vow of silence. And he's like, well, I didn't really. I just don't talk. And so everybody assumes I did. And so he tells her that he knew about Ansel. He knew what she was doing. And he was hoping that the more she stayed with him, that she would change her mind and that she would become a better person. And he's like, that's the reason I never trained her, is I wanted her to show me who she was before I trained her. And so there's a bonding moment between her and the master because he also, he goes negative against Arabin because he's like, that's not how you should run your assassins. Like,
he lays down the law about it. He's like, he's exploiting you. He's in it for the wrong reasons. He's using you. There's never going to be an end to it as long as you're with him. And he's trying to show Celaena the light. It's almost like he's a father figure for her in this scene. And it's just, Ansel never would do the right thing, would never take the blame for someone else or do like just kind things like that. So she failed every test that he ever posed or she was ever posed with.
And Celaena, once knowing that information, you know why he chose to train Celaena after she's like, hey, it was me. I don't want to get her in trouble. Because that was Celaena saying, you know what? I'm willing to take the fall, when clearly he knew that it wasn't her that made this choice. Because he knew all the back history. He knew that she was working with Lord Beric. And so that stealing of the horses is what gave him the legal right to go and attack them. Yes. And the master knew that. He knew it was coming. He knew what Ansel was doing. And so that was his "you passed my test" for Selena. And so yes, he does. He lays into Arabin quite a bit there. And he tells her that a master should never treat their apprentices that way. They should never beat them. And here at the Silent Assassins, we don't do that. Like, we treat them like people, basically, and not property. And so I like him a lot.
Mm-hmm. He definitely has the servant leadership mentality where everyone's more equal on a level playing field than this hierarchy that Arabin subscribes to and ingrains in his people. But I just love these short stories. I think they did a great job of like sprinkling in some context and just making Selena a more realized, fully fleshed out person with a past.
Yes, and you get one more piece of context in this, because when she leaves the Silent Keep, she doesn't leave alone. And she's like, why are people coming with me? And he's like, you're going to need them to carry the stuff. And he's like, this is payment for saving my life.
3 trunks of gold.
Yes, so basically he gives her the money so that she can buy her own freedom. And that's when he says, here, the Silent Assassins don't play that game. Like, you're free. Like, you should not be indebted to your master. And he should not have the ability to beat you whenever he wants. And so that you get the context of how she ended up paying herself out of her debt to where she could make more of the decisions of what she was doing.
From here on out, it's going to be interesting to see her next steps, because she already got herself an apartment. Now she has payment where she could effectively pay off her debt and be freed of Arabin, if there is such a thing. And she will figure out what's wrong with Sam. So we have the assassin and the underworld, and the assassin and the empire left. I'm like so tense and cringing at everything that will pass.
And she also still has the silk, so that is worth a lot of money too. And so she's in her head like, oh, I have a lot. Like, I've got a lot. She
is so wealthy.
It's a neat switch from where the second short story left off with her giving all of her money to Irene. And so she's broke. Like, she doesn't have hardly any money left. And you see that in the scene that she's shopping, because she's like, I don't have enough money. I don't have enough money. But then she's leaving with like trunkfuls of gold and spider silk. She's a lot better off after she visits this keep.
Yeah, I'm sure Arabin will be super happy when Selena comes back from her 1 month of punishment in the desert to see that she's just like, here's some money. Bye.
Yes. Like, I am so happy you sent me on that punishment, because like, I had a person who actually cared about me as a mentor. So I know what that's like. I met some friends. I had some fun. I recovered from your beating, and I have all the money I need. And you don't have a pull on me anymore, because like, without all of those things, he could still like, well, I'm your father figure, or I'm still like the one controlling the purse strings, or, you know, nobody cares about you.
Yeah.
You know, all of those things. He'd have some way of mind fucking her into doing what he wanted to do. The Silent Assassins just gave her all of that away.
So much respect too. Like, they just empowered her. What I like about Selena is it doesn't matter where she goes. It could be Skulls Bay, it could be the Red Desert. Wherever she goes, she makes friends. Like, they just like gravitate to her. And it's like, if you're a shitty person, yeah, you're not gonna like her and you're gonna think she's arrogant, blah blah blah. But like, she just makes friends left and right.
Well, a lot of that is she is also a ride or die. Like, she's a good person, and everybody who she cares about knows that she will do whatever she can to make sure that they are living a good life and all of that. And I foresee all of these characters coming back. I mean, maybe not the slaves, because she didn't really meet any of those individuals.
Only Dia.
Yeah. But I foresee Irene coming back in the stories. And I foresee, like we've already mentioned, Ansel coming back. And I foresee the master coming back in some way in the future stories. But I could be wrong. Maybe they're just in these little sections. But I think that they're going to help her in the long run.
I'll just say one more comment about what I think these short stories did a great job of showing is, especially in the desert one, it gives you a lot of backstory as to why Selena has major trust issues. You know, you've had Arabin gaslighting her all her life, pretty much since he found her, and just treating her like shit. Then you have Ansel befriending her and then betraying everyone, where people got killed, like innocent people got killed, and Ansel didn't even bat an eye about it.
Well,
like,
and she
so
killed
evil.
She killed Mikhail, who she was in a relationship with. She was like,
So I made a comment in an earlier episode, which it was when Selena had major trust issues with Nehemia and was very suspicious of her. But it's like, okay, we see why Selena is this way, because anyone that befriends her could like turn on a dime at any moment. So of course she's going to be guarded and always be watching her back when she's experienced so many different things. So it's such a rich building of a character.
Yeah, and I called that one in that episode before I'd read this because, I mean, you just got the sense that Selena had been through it.
And we have 2 more stories still to get through. So next Tuesday, we are going to chat about the assassin in the underworld and the assassin and the empire before coming back to Queen of Shadows to see where our heroine is with the lay of things.
I can't wait because I envision a lot of murder and mayhem coming down to the king, and I am so ready for him to get it.
She's wearing your red today, power red. So we hope you enjoyed this discussion of the first 3 short stories in the Assassin's Blade collection. Like I said, next week we're going to talk about the last 2 stories before getting back into Queen of Shadows for part 1. So if you like this discussion, please like and comment and consider subscribing. And we will see you next week. Thanks for listening. Bye.